and get that recording going. All right, we've started. So today's session is mostly for the business order entry. So I've got us on an existing business account. As far as creating the account itself, I'm going to select this edit option here so we can see that main account page. It's not really any different from creating a residential account other than you select business as your sector. By doing that, you get a little bit of a different feature set available to you in the packages for voice services. And this group services menu here, you have a lot more availability for business accounts as well. And you'll also notice that the name fields change. Now for residential, you break it up between first, middle, and last, but from a business perspective, you just put the whole business name right there in that one field. So that's really the only differences from an order entry perspective as far as creating the account. You're still going to go through the process of adding the O&T and all of that normal stuff as far as work order generation, the service orders that generate based off of the voice service, the video service, or the data service. All of those are named the same. It's the same process. So the main difference for you between a business and a residential account are your features. What's available to those business customers is a little bit more robust than what's available to your residential customers. And we'll take a look at that as we add some voice services. Okay. Oh, sorry. There we go. I've had this up for a while. There we go. Okay, so you would normally come into the system just as you do now, create that account, do that O&T selection, whether you know what it's going to be or you're selecting choose device later. And then when it comes to the voice service itself, it's the same process. You select the voice tab. Typically, you're not going to see any records here, so then you would just choose the add new. All of these screens are the same. So you've got your 911 address that pre-populates. You also have your switch that pre-populates. Now for residential services, these fields here regarding the outbound dial digit are restricted because it doesn't apply to residential accounts. So for businesses, these are no longer restricted, but it's still up to you on whether or not you want to indicate for that business to have an outbound dial digit or not. More often than not, customers ask that they do not have an outbound dial digit. So that's why it defaults the way that it does with that box unchecked. So if a business does want it, you simply check that box, and then you'll choose your outbound dial digit from there. Now, as far as these two fields, the internal access digit and the dial plan length. The internal access digit just applies from a switch perspective, but this dial plan length of 4, that's important because that's where you get your 4-digit dialing. So that's what's going to allow them, if they have more than one line, to be able to dial each other just using the last 4 digits of the phone number. If you have a situation where they have more than one phone number on an account that ends in the same 4 digits, you're going to have to choose a dial plan length of 5 because the switch is going to say, hey, you have 2 that end exactly the same. When we do 4-digit dialing, I'm not going to know which one you want it to go to. And if you say, for example, you go through the system and you add those numbers into Crossoft, there are things in place that are going to prevent you from being able to do that. So it'll prompt you to come back and change this dial plan length if you for some reason forget to do that. But most of the time you're just going to leave those exactly as they are. All right? The device option still defaults to existing. It's still going to pull this device type based off of the O&T that you have selected or assigned to the account, and then a unique device name. and then it will give you the available ports. If it is a single port device, that port selection should always default to port 1. So we'll choose port 2 since I already have something currently active on port 1. So down here, we have existing devices and used ports. When you're keying the first line on an account, you're not going to have this particular table. If you're...
You can't see the bottom of the screen, Amanda.
Oh.
See that maximize in the very top corner? On the right? Yeah, maximize in the middle. Yeah. There you go.
Thank you.
That's a little bit.
So we can see this existing devices and used ports now? Okay, great. So for accounts that have been established for a while and they've had services on them, even if those services were disconnected and you're reinstalling it later, it keeps record of what used to be out there. So on this same 424 device, we've had 2 different phone lines. Now I know I do currently have one active, so that's this number right here. This number has since been disconnected. But you're able to look back and see that history to say, okay, what was out there before for this device before we disconnected it? Okay. So I'm going to choose Next as I normally would. This page is exactly the same. You have all of the same options. You're going to choose L&P if the numbers are porting in. Now for businesses, that very first line, you generally want it to be the main number on that account because the directory selection is going to default at yes. For any other lines added to the account, it will stay at no. So you'll physically have to move it over to yes if it's an additional line that they want published in the phone book. We'll just leave that. We'll put that at yes so we can see, you can see the differences on that screen as well. But for the most part here, everything is the same. There's no additional fields. For businesses, you probably will want to use the station first name and station last name fields for accounts that have multiple lines. That way you can indicate a difference between the phone lines. So for the main number, you could type main as the first name and number as the last name. For additional lines, you could do line 1, line 2, break room, whatever it may be, just so you can easily tell the difference between the phone lines when you're looking at them from a troubleshooting perspective. It's just food for thought because sometimes when customers call in to report an issue, they may not know the phone number that's associated with that actual device. They just might call in and say, hey, the break room phone's not working. So that'll give you a little bit more information to be able to say, okay, here's the break room phone.
Fax line.
Exactly. Credit card machine, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now your packages will be different from your residential. The rates are different, so that's why they are different packages. But for the most part, they're exactly the same. Business Basic, Business Local, Business Plus. We'll choose Business Plus. So that's going to move all of these features over for us by default. And these are the features that you indicated should be included with this Business Plus package. I'm also going to move over a couple of additional features so that way we can take a look at them, like override calling number. I'm going to move that one over. Yeah. Okay. All right. And I'm going to choose a phone number for us. Let's choose this top one and select Next. Okay. Because I have voicemail in the package, it's asking me to enter in a voicemail password. So I'm going to do that now. That ring count defaults to 5 just like it does for residential, so there's no difference there. Alright, so here's our directory listing page. Again, the name for businesses is all one field. It's not broken up into separate fields like it is for residential. And it's going to pull that business name based off of the name that you entered on the account when you created it. But it's free type, so you can go in and change it if need be. The list codes are exactly the same. You still only have those 3 options. And now the directory section comes into play for businesses. The customer can be in both the white and the yellow pages, or they can choose just to be in the white pages or just the yellow pages. So you can do, most of the time they want it in both, but you can either ask your customers that, or you can just choose both by default if you'd like, or white, however you guys would like to do it. Now, if you choose white, the yellow page field becomes restricted and defaults to none. So that when I push this order through to the publisher, it goes through with the white pages and no yellow page code. If you choose yellow or both, then yellow page stays open and you can choose the appropriate yellow page header. And these are the codes that the publisher uses, but you can just base your selection off of the header, which is the text that's next to those numbers.
Would it be just crazy because it's so hard, because they're not really in alphabetical order? Would it be possible to get like a spreadsheet of what all those are so that we could sort of pick that out beforehand?
Yes, for the most part they are in alphabetical order, except for none, which is why I had it default to none, because that one's really, you shouldn't have to pick that when you're selecting both. But I do have these in an external document. It's a PDF file that I've gotten directly from the publisher, so I'll send that over to you so you have that.
Awesome, thanks.
No problem. Let me make a quick note. Send YPH codes. Okay.
I can only pick from one of those.
Yes, you can only pick from one. So if the customer wants to be under an additional header in the yellow pages, they'll have to call the publisher directly and work with them on getting that additional publication. This yellow page listing is free, but any additional yellow page listings are not, and they'll have to pay a fee directly to Bell South, is who publishes pretty much every phone book you guys have. So they'd just have to call Bell South to get, or the yellow pages, to get an additional listing in there. And the same goes for if they want like a big ad in the yellow pages, then they have to go to Bell South for that. That's not something we can do for them. Okay. All right. And then there's additional listing details. So this is really for, like, say you want the main number listed, but they also want maybe, like for churches, they may want the rectory listed, but they also want a listing for, maybe they have child care there, and it's the same phone number. Then they can put that information here. Choose Next to proceed. So we come to the same quality control page. You can review the information, make sure that everything that you've entered is accurate. And as long as you're happy with it, then you can select Submit. Okay, so that phone line has been added to the account. It's inactive until we push that MAC address through to the system. And then a service order was generated, just like for residential, new install voice. So there's no differences there as far as tasks go, or internal processes as far as you all are concerned. Okay. So we're going to go over here to my already active one. There we go. Okay. So once a business line is active, you can edit any information that you need to, just like for residential. You can reset voicemail passwords, change directory listings, caller ID, all of those various items. One thing I wanted to add into the I did add into this package, or into our other package. Let me add it over here. Override calling number. There we go. So the override calling number feature is for a business where, for example, they want their outbound calls to show their main number rather than the different extensions. So for the main number, there's not really anything you need to do from there, because if it is registered and it's not just a virtual number that forwards somewhere, outbound calls are already going to show that phone number. But for additional lines, you'll need to indicate to CrossSoft what phone number it should display on outbound calls. So if that's necessary, you would assign that override calling number feature into the subscribed features, and then from the caller ID settings, you'll now get a drop-down that says calling number. So from there, you would have a list of all of the active numbers on that account, and you would pick the appropriate one that should display on outbound calls. Once you've chosen your number, you select Save, and that will update that information at the switch level. Okay. Now, additionally, for businesses, you can change settings. I'm going to choose, I've expanded my account menu and gone to settings. So here's where you can edit the outbound dial digit if need be. Say one was added and later on down the line they don't want it. The outbound dial digit would display here. You select Edit, change it back to Select, and hit Update, and then it would take it off. If there's not one there and you want it, you select Edit, choose your outbound dial digit, select Update, and it would add that. If you'd like to indicate to the system what the main number is for that account, you can select Edit and then choose that main number and then Update. And then now there's never any question about what that main number is on the account. And then from a phone perspective, the icon here, this little phone icon, changes color. And when you hover, it will say main number. But again, that's completely up to you all if you want to take care of that here in the system. Now for businesses, there's also additional group services that are available. So you have Call Park. That's where, say, an incoming call comes in. You can park that call by dialing a star code. You would put the call on hold, dial the Call Park star code. The switch will it will tell you an orbit code is a 4-digit code. And then you can go to any phone on that account, dial the star code to retrieve the call along with that orbit code, and then the call picks up right there from that phone. As far as the caller knows, all you've ever done was place them on hold. So to assign those features, you would select your Meta as the switch. You indicate a name and then a recall timer. What that recall timer is say you've put a call on, you've parked a call on a particular orbit code. If that call is not retrieved within a certain amount of seconds, then it will ring back to the original phone. So that recall timer, I typically advise that you only put anywhere like a maximum of 1 minute. Because you don't want your callers sitting there on Call Park forever, just in case you forget that you parked it. Then you would, the selected users will move over by default. So this is an all or nothing kind of thing. All of the numbers on that account will get Call Park. And then you'll select Submit, and it would assign the Call Park feature to the numbers in that selected users box. There's Call Pickup. Now, for Call Pickup, there are 2 features. There's this particular feature here, This is more along the lines of group pickup. And basically what that means is if there's multiple phones on an account and a call comes in, from group pickup, no matter where that call is ringing, there's a star code you can dial from your extension that would pick up that phone call. Then in the features, in the actual package at the line level, there's a feature called directed call pickup. It works very similarly. A call comes into a particular extension and you want to answer it. If you did not have group pickup, you would dial the direct call pickup star code and then enter in that extension that's ringing, and then that call would come to your phone for you to be able to handle that for them. So it's very similar to the call park. You choose the meta switch, you give it a name, and you move on this one. You move over the lines that you want that feature subscribed to. Okay. There is conference bridging available in CrossSoft. You would choose the meta switch, then you enter in the name details, and then the phone number. This is the phone number that's going to be the pilot number for your conference bridges. So no matter how many bridges are built and how many users are selected to have that particular conferencing feature, anytime you go to access a conference bridge, this is the number that the callers would need to dial to get into that bridge. And then you would have the additional PIN information from there. There's two different types of hunt groups available in CrossSoft. There's the multi-line hunt group, which is here, and then there's the Madden, which the Madden doesn't have as many bells and whistles. Okay, so you have your meta switch. You would choose the pilot number for that hunt group or that Madden. Then there would only be one package to choose from, so it would default. And then from there you choose a ring pattern. And I'm going to send you guys definitions of the ring patterns. Let me write that down. Define ring pattern. I think it's in that business services packet that I gave you, but I'll double check. So essentially most of these are ring all, longest idle, or round robin. Ring all would ring everybody. Longest idle would ring the phone that has been sitting the longest. And round robin would go in a particular order and just move around from phone to phone until someone answered that call. And then you move over your user, select submit, and then it would create that particular hunt group. Now here you have your multi-line hunt group, which has a lot more bells and whistles. So it's pretty much the same. Your switch is meta, you give that hunt group a name, and that's mainly so you can differentiate between different hunt groups in case there's more than one. At a doctor's office, you may have a hunt group for appointments, a hunt group for a nurse, a hunt group for insurance questions, things like that. So you could have a unique hunt group name, so that way you would be able to tell the difference. And again, here you would be choosing your pilot number. So if you needed to forward calls to a hunt group, this is the phone number you're going to have as your forwarding destination. Then you assign the various users. And here you'll choose your ring pattern, and I'll get you the definition of these also. But there you have circular, uniform is kind of your ring all selection. Okay, and then you have your max queue length, which is the maximum number of incoming calls that particular hunt group can get at one time. Then you have your max queue timeout. This is the time in seconds that an incoming call is kept waiting for someone to answer. So you would define that, or the customer, that would be two questions you would need to know from the customer's perspective. And it is something that can be edited. So if they feel like they've started it out with that queue length or the timeout length too small, you can come in and increase that. Then if you need to send that over to a voicemail box, then you could enter the phone number for that particular voicemail box. Or say you want it to roll over to a secondary hunt group, then you would put the pilot number for that secondary hunt group. Enabling distinctive ring, that just by checking that box, you're saying hunt group calls should ring different than calls directly into my extension. So that way that user knows the difference between a hunt group call and a regular phone call. An additional feature to kind of help differentiate is, especially if they're dealing with if they're answering calls for multiple hunt groups, maybe they have to answer that phone differently based on which hunt group call that came from. So you have this option here to show the hunt group pilot number as the calling number. So what that would do is incoming calls wouldn't show the caller's phone number. It would actually show this number here, that hunt group pilot number. So that way it would let that user know, okay, this is the customer service hunt group versus this is the accounting hunt group. So I know that I need to answer those calls a little bit differently. And then you have some available features. Now, for the most part, these are more advanced features for hunt groups. I've never really seen too many customers use these features, but we can run through them real quick. The anonymous call rejection is pretty self-explanatory, blocks incoming calls where that caller has blocked their caller ID. Then you have selective call rejection, so you can, for a particular hunt group, you can go in and say, we don't want calls from these particular phone numbers. Unconditional call forwarding is basically immediate call forwarding. And then you have your selective call forwarding. So that's where you're going to define certain rules on when to forward. Maybe time of day, it may be particular phone numbers, and then I'll get you the definition for termination attempt trigger. That one just left my mind at this very moment. But if you want to assign those, you would simply highlight them and move them over as selected features. Okay. Then we'll take a quick look at shared voicemail. This is more for situations where maybe your hunt group, you want it to roll over to a particular voicemail, but it's not necessarily a voicemail for someone's extension. It's just kind of a voicemail-only voicemail box. So you would choose your meta switch, and there would be a package associated with it. But then you would choose a name. So you might have one for accounting. You might have one for the front office, main voicemail, after hours voicemail. That way you can tell the difference between them. And then you would choose a voicemail password for that. And again, a pilot number. Now, shared voicemail, for the most part, you're really only ever going to move over voicemail and do not disturb, so we added those by default. What that does, that do not disturb, it makes it so that whenever it's delivered to this voicemail box, it goes straight to the voicemail box. It doesn't have any recording as far as the caller's not accepting calls or anything like that. It's just boom, you're right in that voicemail box. If someone needs access remotely to that voicemail box, then you could give them web portal, so that way they could go in through that application and view those voicemails and manage them there. Okay. Are there any questions so far? I know this has been quite a bit information. Going to take your silence.
You're going to set up the first 50 for us, right?
I will certainly help walk you through as many as you need me to.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Like, we got 5 lines going in tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. So do that.
Which one's that?
Is it okay? Is it
tomorrow?
Is it already in the
I'm
system, or you're doing the order entry tomorrow?
We're doing the order entry tomorrow. Are you
Okay.
talking about Carol?
Okay. So if you, during that process, if you want to call and let me know and everything, then I can walk through that with you. We can set something up so I can see your screen.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So that kind of covers group services. We've been through SIP trunking, but we'll take another quick look at that as well. So if,
Amanda,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Chastity. What options will be available to the customer to be able to change, like through a portal or something?
They would
Like
have,
what range?
okay.
Go ahead.
If they need to make any changes, they're going to have to come to you to make those changes for the most part. Now, unless they have something like web portal. So, which we'll look at here in a minute. Sorry, my headphones were pinching my ear. We'll take a look at web portal here next. Now, if they need to make changes to the hunt group or anything like that, they're going to have to reach out to you and let you know that. They don't have access to the hunt groups or call park or call pickup through any type of web-based application. Now, there is something called Premium Attendant, and that is kind of like it's a web-based application, kind of like Web Portal, where they're able to set up an automated attendant. So from there, they can set up the schedule for their automated attendant, so like when to play the day announcement versus when to play the night announcement. They'll set up those menus, so they'll set up their options that are available to the caller. They can record announcements directly in the the Premium Attendant application, or they can upload announcements. They can record them from the phone. There's various different things that they'll be able to do in that Premium Attendant, which we'll have a separate training session for, because that Premium Attendant application is extremely robust.
I don't like it when you say extremely robust. They are.
Well, there's a lot. I will say this: in my experience, the Premium Attendant is the easiest application for taking care of an automated attendant. For your schedules, you just color a grid. You don't have to fill in fields and try and do all this math and how long here, how long there, and make sure that you're choosing calls to go from 50 right down to 4:59 and switch over right at 5 o'clock. You simply just make a color and highlight those times on a grid. So once you get into it, you'll see how easy it is. But there are lots of menus and lots of selections available to the user. And
okay,
that.
Do you all have like a template or something that we could let the customer fill out ahead of time so that they can be thinking about those things?
I did send over something called a cut sheet, and I think there's a copy of it in that book that I sent.
Yeah. They just told me about it.
Yeah. So it'll have a good bit of questions that you can ask that customer.
Force them to take that web portal. Yeah. Push $1. Put it in their hands.
To access the web portal?
Yeah, we're going to make them do that. We know how complicated our system here is, and we don't want to get into that business.
Yeah, no. All right. So for SIP trunking, you would create your account, your business account, just like you normally would, and then you'll come into CrossSoft and you'll expand this group services menu and select SIP trunk. So you're going to, through this wizard, you're going to create the trunk itself and add the phone lines to it. So this is also the same place where you're going to be choosing phone numbers from inventory or entering phone numbers in that are porting in from another carrier. Okay. So we're going to do, you would enter in the SIP trunk name. It cannot have spaces. Then you have the subscriber delivery method that doesn't do anything as far as provisioning goes. It's just something to let you know if you're converting because between you and me, it's going to be a SIP trunk, but the customer's equipment may convert it into a PRI, like yours does. So you can indicate right there that it's a PRI as far as behind the equipment that registers with the switch. We'll just leave this one at SIP. And then you have two trunk types. You have basic and enhanced. For the most part, you're probably going to want to choose enhanced. The difference there is basic does not come with any type of switch level forwarding, where enhanced does. So if for some reason the trunk itself goes down, that customer's having some sort of network issues, and so there's no connectivity for that SIP trunk, at the switch level, we could forward that phone number to an external number. It can be a cell phone, it can be a number from another carrier, whatever it may be. We can do that from the switch level. So that way, until the trunk or the PBX, whatever that may be, is back up and working, they can still receive incoming calls. And then you'll choose your meta switch as your switch. And then you'll ideally only have one SIP package in here. The other one's our test package. So you'll choose SIP trunk, and then you'll do the number of ports. For your knowledge, just to make you guys familiar with this, typically a PRI only has 23 talk paths. Technically it has 24, but that last one is usually just used for like data packets, not necessarily voice traffic. So if you're going to be delivering a PRI to them as far as behind the equipment, then you'll want the number of, if they only want the one PRI, then you'll want that number of ports to be 23. That way they are getting a full PRI-like service from you. From a SIP trunking perspective, it can be any number that you desire. If you start out with 23 and then they see that they're constantly maxing out talk paths, you can come into the system and increase that number of available ports for them. I'm just going to put 2 for right now. And then the gateway device, I'm working to have it right now default to that generic SIP gateway, since there's not any specific device types in here. That could vary by customer, just depending on their PBX vendor or if they have someone in-house that takes care of that for them. So we typically just leave it as generic, because honestly, we don't care what type of PBX is being used. We have no preference. That's totally driven by the customer based off of what they're looking for out of that PBX. We always want authentication on yes, and then you would enter the username and then the password. That's going to be the registration credentials. So if the PBX can't support a username with alpha characters in it, then just make that completely numerical, and then you would type in the password. And then you would need to give that information over to whoever is going to be provisioning that PBX. And then you'll have the remote IP. That remote IP is the IP address that that PBX device will be using to register with our switch. That way our switch recognizes it. And then the switch IP should default here pretty soon to that selection, since there's only one. The remote port, I'll just put something in here so we can move to the next page. Nope. Goodness, can I type? Okay, the remote port we typically want you to use is 5060. So I'll have those, I've got a ticket open about those defaulting as well. Okay. And then the last field that you would really have to worry about would be enabling an account level package. These are packages where, let's say, for example, you offered this particular customer 3,000 long distance minutes a month. Well, we would want to apply those free minutes at the account level, not the line level, because otherwise each line is going to get 3,000 free minutes. So if you ever have a customer where that was kind of a big selling point for them, or a big pain point for them, and that's what you want to offer, then we can create some account level packages that maybe have some shared free minutes of use, and then you could apply that here to the trunk. That's also available to your regular business accounts. It doesn't have to be a SIP trunk either. Okay. So I'm going to choose Next to proceed. So this is going to bring me to the page where I'm actually going to add my SIP trunk members or my SIP trunking lines. So you have a lot of the same selections. You have L&P, yes or no, directory, yes or no. So if we choose L&P yes, then we have to type in that phone number. If we choose directory yes, then it's going to expand that screen and give us the same fields that we would have for our normal business lines. I'll put that at no. Now for L&P of yes, we do have the ability to upload a file for SIP trunks. Because the order entry process, you have to add it line by line. If you've got 100 or more, 50 or more, you're not going to want to have to do that one at a time. Plus, with L&P, you're having to type in those phone numbers digit by digit. And none of us is perfect, so typos can be made. So by doing it from a file, it kind of brings some of those common errors out of the equation and gives you the chance to provide more accurate information. So we'll just choose no for this demonstration, but for our package, you'll choose your SIP DID package, caller ID, first name and last name, pulls from the business name that's entered. That can be changed as well. Use your due date, highlight the numbers that you want, and then move them over to selected numbers. They're not on the trunk yet. You still have to select this add option. It's going to ask you, are you sure that you want to move those numbers? Yes, I do. So I'll choose OK. And then now it's got them down here as a selected SIP member. This allows you, especially if you're doing L&Ps, to look back over these numbers and see if you made any errors. If you did, you can select the delete option, or you can select the edit option to go back and make a change to that particular phone number. Then you'll want to choose your primary extension. Now, if you're porting numbers in, that's generally the main number on the account. Essentially what that primary extension is it's basically the pilot number that's going to be used by the switch to build the trunk. There's not any differences from a calling standpoint or a billing standpoint for that primary extension. It's just something that the switch needs in order to build the trunk itself. Okay. Now I'm going to select Submit. And what that's going to do is it's going to prompt the system to create my trunk and create my SIP trunk service orders. Okay. So here are our SIP trunk service orders. You can see here are my lines, and then here's the trunk itself. This will go active once that primary extension has been submitted through to the switch. And you do that the same way you do them now. You just select the edit option for the MAC address, but it's going to tell you it's a SIP line, no MAC is required. You select submit, and at that point it's going to provision the trunk and put the primary extension phone line as a member. The additional numbers, you'll need to go through those and activate those. Okay. Any questions from a SIP trunking perspective?
We'll have to table that for when we're doing them.
Okay.
Walking through them and then seeing this in retrospect is going to be a lot different.
Oh, yes, it will be. Well, and if when you're talking with customers, Jennifer, and if they ask you any type of questions about can they do this, can they do that, anything like that, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email or call into us, and we can answer any questions. I've had that happen in the past where a customer of ours, one of their account executives, might have gone to meet with a potential customer and kind of got a list of questions from them and wasn't sure what we could do for that particular customer, whether we could handle some of those things or not. So sometimes she would call me and talk with me after she had those customer meetings, or she would shoot an email over to us kind of with those laid out, and then I could go through those and get her answers. So we're always available if any of your business customers present questions and you're curious about the functionality or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So from a business perspective, that kind of covers everything as far as order entry goes. It's very similar to residential. Like I said, you just have a couple of additional features available to those particular business customers. You still activate the numbers the same. You still print your work orders the same. So the order entry process, at least for just your O&T business types, should be pretty easy for you, in that you guys are already doing awesome with residential. But as I stated, if we've got those tomorrow that you want to enter, I'm happy to walk you through that process and just kind of be there just to kind of watch and give you that feedback.
Well, we've done that. It's just they're not doing any of the SIP trunking. We've done it.
We've had some that went very well, so
Well, yeah, because they had to go back and recalculate it because the address.
Yeah.
you don't know about.
Yeah, the address that you verified for me is the one we're going to be working on tomorrow. So, and
Okay,
it's got four numbers to port. So
Okay. I will.
we've got them on the schedule for the 28th
Okay.
of December.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a
That
problem.
should give us
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
How hard is it? Go ahead.
If the port doesn't go till the 28th at 8 o'clock,
Right.
then that customer's gonna be without service.
Yeah, how do you define that down to the time frame?
It's the activation vendor. That's not me. I didn't decide 8 o'clock. So that's why most of the time we do have the option to delay a port. So if you get out there and something happens, maybe there's some sort of network issues and you guys aren't ready to switch the phone service over because it is a business, we can delay that port a total of 2 separate times. So you get out there, there's a network issue, you can't do it, I can delay it today and I can delay it for tomorrow. You go back out tomorrow, the customer still can't get those network issues ironed out, so we need to delay it one more time. That's fine.
I guess the question is, does it do it by the day and not a specific time? It does it by the day, does it not? That's why it's cut off at midnight on that other customer. So if we schedule them to install on the 28th, it doesn't matter what time we go out there, 8 or 2. As soon as we plug ours up and do the install, then that's when the services end with the other carrier.
To
or
a
the
certain
night before.
To a certain extent. Some carriers, they do constant checks throughout the day to see what numbers have ported out, and as they port out, they will remove them from their switches. Most carriers will wait until the day after the port has happened, or until the day after the due date. Because I have to have that due date so I can tell the other carrier when I want to take that phone number.
Okay. Well, if you have the actual day, you need the actual time of the install. Because, that could be derailed by an hour or so, too, I guess.
If they don't port till 8 o'clock. And
You don't-
do it and you do it at 2 o'clock that day. Then they're not going to have any, if you do this, if they're not porting till Friday night at 8 o'clock, and you do it at 2 o'clock on Friday, they are not going to have, if we hook all of our equipment up, they are not going to have any incoming calls until 8 o'clock that night.
Well, the 8 o'clock is a default. I can activate it any time on the due date. So if you go out there and you're right there
I
at
don't know where you got
8 a.m., you call me, I can activate it. It's just if it hasn't been activated on that date, it's going to auto activate by 8 o'clock or at 8 o'clock.
I guess what we're saying is if it's the 28th, let's say we schedule tomorrow, we put those ports in for the 28th. So you're in the back end putting that date in. So when our guys go out there, it don't matter if it's 8 o'clock or 2 o'clock. When they plug those phones up, we want them to work without their service being disturbed. We don't want their phones to get cut off prematurely.
Yes. So the only time their service should get cut off prematurely is if for some reason I have not been able to get any information from you guys about whether or not I need to reschedule or cancel a port. That's already supposed to happen.
I guess we're just nervous because the first one we done, it happened, But I guess because I'm used to doing wireless more than this.
Which one are you referring to?
Rogers for home.
Home Center.
Yeah, so they cut off the midnight before. So if you're in the back end putting the 28th, they're not going to cancel it till when?
I thought that was a date issue in our system.
That was a date issue, but that was not. That was with the carrier system that was submitted to. They had a glitch in that system. Their system, for whatever reason, changed the due date that was originally requested on that. When I canceled the first order because I had to add that second phone line to it, I resubmitted it with the 2 phone lines. I got confirmation for the correct due date, and so I saved that order. I'm good. I closed out everything on my end. Then behind the scenes, their system had some sort of glitch that changed that due date to the 6th for some reason, which is and because it wasn't actually supposed to go on the 6th, no one called, you guys didn't go out to install it, and because of the auto activate on these ports, it auto activated at 8 o'clock. Now, some carriers will cut off whether I have activated the phone number or not. They will cut off that customer service on midnight on the day that of that confirmation. But that's their practice. That's not mine.
Well, I guess my question then, when you say the day of, is that midnight, which is 12 o'clock in the morning, 1 minute after 11:59 on the 6th, if it was set for the 7th. So at 00 hours on the 7th, if it's set for the 7th, it would cut off at midnight.
Some carriers would do that, but because of the auto activation in at the vendor level, with the system that we go into to activate ports, that system is where there's a rule that everything, when you schedule a port, no matter what date it is, if I don't come in and activate it in advance, it's going to auto port at 8 o'clock that night. Which is why...
Right, on the 7th, if you have it set for
on
the
the
7th.
7th. If that's the due date
Right.
that was put on the order in CrossSoft, that's the due date I requested. So that's the due date that the vendor is going, or that the carrier has in their system, that they're going to, that number should be porting out to someone else. But outside of whatever their processes are, the system where ports get activated, that system has a rule that I can't override that says ports will auto-activate at 8 o'clock p.m. if they're not activated sooner.
So they would just have to plug them up, and they wouldn't be able to do test calls or anything like that. They'd just plug them up.
No,
No.
You're missing what she's saying. She said if it's not sooner. So
if it's not sooner,
it will go, if you set it for the 7th, it'll go at 8 o'clock whether you do anything or not.
Yes.
However, if you complete the install by 2 p.m., she can complete, or you will complete the install, and it will automatically port it right then.
Because someone there for the ports, whenever you guys are doing that install, someone, whether that's Mike or that's somebody in the office, someone has to call and let me know, okay, we're on site, we've plugged everything up, we're ready to go on this port, and then I push the activate button on that phone number.
With every single port?
Okay, so do we have to call you for every port?
Yes.
Yes?
Unless you want to pick times for them to auto activate, and that's because we do, just like you said, you don't want their services taken down before you get out there. Because who's to say you get out there and then they're not even home? If we've already activated their number, then they're not going to get any incoming phone calls.
Well, I guess the question now becomes, so if you get hit by a truck, God forbid, and we have to call, I mean, I thought when we pushed the SIP install through or whatever, when we push that through, I thought that actually activates it. So you have to hit the red button. Yes,
there's an external system that all carriers, all phone carriers use that transfers ownership back and forth. So I have to activate that so it will send translations out to all of the other carriers. So that way when somebody calls that phone number, their system knows that's not Charter anymore, that's Crosstel. I need to route that call to Crosstel.
I get it. All right, so it's a separate system that we don't have access to.
No.
All right.
I'm working on potentially getting that automated. So there's a SOA task on the service orders in CrossSoft, so I'm looking at having that task essentially do the activation for you.
Okay.
But again, it's the only reason you have to contact us for every port is just so we're not activating it prior to the customer being ready for that. Now, no
wonder you're charging me so much money to port a call.
Well, we also get charges from the different carriers for the orders that we submit.
Yeah.
And the transactions that take place when there's activations and all of that stuff.
What happened with our previous report?
Well, did you not hear what she said?
I mean, we didn't call her.
No, you didn't, but someone at the other location where the phone number was coming from changed the date to the day prior, and it activated at midnight. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Believe me, they got a nice little earful about that.
Yeah. All right.
And I essentially, the ports that were at that point, the ports that had already been scheduled, I went back and looked at, pulled up those confirmations in the system themselves, not just the saved copies that I had, and checked those due dates. And those due dates, I've been checking them every single day, and I've been checking them as far as 3 business days out in advance. So that way, if something happens with that system again and they start changing my due dates, I can catch it in advance versus having especially a business port, activate prior than it should.
Are you the only one doing this?
A lot of it gets automated, but no, I'm not the only one.
Okay, so Olivia could do it if you fell down the stairs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I always said get hit by a bus, but.
Hey, Jeffrey, this is Olivia. I'm sorry, I just caught the end of that. But you remember on our conversation today, I know Amanda said call that in to me, but she's speaking as a whole. Call into customer support. You call into Crosstail. So whoever's calling that in would call into that, our main number, that main toll-free number, yes. And then one of the reps, whether it's me, Amanda, or Beth, or anybody here, we will get that call and can do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
All right. Are we done with this?
From across.
Go
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask is, we talked about SIP trunks here and business lines and such. We haven't talked anything about Matrix or Centrix. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
I call it hosted PBX.
Basically, yes. I know what you're referring to.
Hooking up a phone, just an IP phone, hooking it up to the internet and it registering with you guys. I know we did that while Febby was here. We tested that. But my question is, if, let's say I have a company, specifically Chipale, somewhere down the road, they might want to do that because their PBX is dilapidated and going out of service and all that good stuff. So if they wanted to do IP phones at every location, does that location necessarily have to be on my network?
No.
I know an analog line does, but...
It doesn't.
Okay, because the IP that you put in for the, the SIP trunk was obviously an internal private IP address that goes back to your server here.
Yes.
But we would have the ability to register an IP phone outside of my network, because let's say my business has 4 locations here in the county, but I've got one that's just outside of our service area.
Yep.
You'd still be able to register that other line. Yes,
it's because I have a situation like that where I have my desk phone and thing and such, but then I can, and that's on our internal office network, but I can take my desk phone if I wanted to and unplug it and take it home and plug it into my charger service, and it would still work.
Well, we can do that also with our Digium system, but I wanted to verify that we could do that if we ever had that case that we wanted to do that with a customer.
Yeah,
there are going to be customers like that.
Yes, and we do. I went back inside the service order so I could change the device. We do have 2, I think, right now loaded into the system: the Grand Stream 2140, and then the SPA 504. Are preloaded here. So if they're using like anything like if they're using a Link, or what is the other one? Polycom. That's the one I was trying to think about. Then we'll just key it as a generic device, and then and go from there. I mean, the provisioning on those might have to be manual, but we would assist with that and kind of help you with that, and then and go from there. Just kind of walk you through that. We've had situations like that before. I can't remember what it was, but I think it was an auto parts store, and they had locations all over the place, and some people worked from home and stuff like that. So they, all of their phone lines were keyed all on one account. They didn't do different accounts per location or anything. And some of those phones were, like I said, were at someone's residence versus, the within, and they were long distance too. They were, I believe, 2 of them were out of state. Those particular devices were, but they worked just fine.
And in that situation with a hosted PBX situation, you would pick how many call paths you wanted, outside lines, like, call paths to the world, versus I could have 6 phones but only have 2 lines, right? What?
You can.
I mean, I only need 2 call paths going out, but 6 different phones going to different people. I mean,
well, Crosssoft doesn't, at least the way that the system is designed and the way that it works, you're not going to have, from a Crosssoft perspective, you're not going to define like, oh, there's only going to be 2 call paths. Crosssoft is going to build that phone number in the switch. It's going to provision it in the switch with the appropriate features. And then if it's a Grandstream device or a Cisco device, we do have the capability of delivering a config file to a provisioning server for those devices. But that's pretty much all that we're going to do from a Crosssoft perspective. So if someone needs to drill down a little bit further than that, then we might have to do something like that from a manual perspective, at least if they're wanting to restrict, the number of talk paths and things.
well, I mean, a company like our size, we have 70 employees, let's say, but we only have 23 lines, because you don't have all 70 people on the phone at once.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason for us to have 70 lines. Wouldn't make sense. But a company that doesn't have an IT department, they want somebody else to take care of that. So they would, or they don't have Chastity who's updating it all the time. So what they have is they have hosted PBX, and they have 60 phone lines, but they only have 20 talk paths out of the system.
I'll have to talk with Ebby on how to do that order entry, because as far as the system goes, you either have you have your matrix service, and that's where you key those different phone lines, but there's no talk path restriction, or you have SIP trunking where there is talk path restriction. At least as far as the way our offerings. But I'll talk with him about that, because it makes logical sense to me. But I'll talk with him about that and see if there's a different way that we would key that into the system.
Well, right now, with our Digium system, I could take my phone home, plug it in, and it would connect to our Digium system, and I'd have a phone at my house just on any internet. Doesn't matter whether it's ours or not. But I've really not got a talk path to the world. I've just got a phone. I hit 9, and it gives me access to the SIP trunk that we created.
Exactly. So
I would think that would be the way. I know for a fact that's the way we did our Metaswitch in Morristown. You set up 11 phones, but you only had 5 lines.
Yes, because
I don't know how to do it in Crosssoft, but I know how to do it in Metaswitch.
That was a SIP trunk. Those were all keyed as SIP trunks. And so if that's something that the customer is looking for, then it would have to go into the system as a SIP trunk, if you're going to restrict the number of talk paths.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
So if we ever get to it, Lord knows we probably won't, but you never know.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, the last thing I wanted to take a look at was web portal.
Yeah.
All righty. Okay. So in your I believe in your Basic Plus package, you get voicemail and web portal by default, even though that's not, I just have our test package assigned. So when you choose voicemail and web portal or that Basic Plus package, you have voicemail here, and this is where you can reset the password. For web portal, this is also where you can reset the password, but there's a nifty little link in here. We'll select Edit. And so if you need to get into the customer's web portal to look at something for them, you don't have to open up an external browser and type in the phone number and reset the password if they don't know what it is or anything like that. You can select that option like you're going to reset the password and then just select this link right there. And so it's going to open up a new web browser and log right on in for you using that particular phone line's credentials. Now, when you select that link and it does log in, the system automatically resets the password for security purposes. So before before the customer can get back in to that, you'll need to reset it to the default for them. And you guys decide whatever default you want to use. All right, so this is what web portal looks like. When you first log into it, it's the credentials are here. We'll look at that I'll hit log out at the end so you can see that login page because it's pretty plain. But this is the web portal application itself. So as soon as you log in, you're going to land here to the dashboard. If you have voicemail messages, they display right here in this box. Any incoming calls or missed calls will display here. It'll show the caller ID name and then the time of that phone call. If that end user would like to, they can load contacts into the web portal application. And that can be used for forwarding or the ComPortal Assistant, which is enabled on this particular phone line. I had them enable it so that way I could show you what it looked like. All right. If there's any forwarding rules, they'll show down here. In this window, it'll say busy forwarding, and then it'll show the destination number. So from a quick view from the dashboard, you can see whether or not forwarding is enabled and what phone number that's going to. Cross-off, you can also see if forwarding is enabled. Under the status, right here, forwarding, it is disabled on this line. I don't have it turned on, but from a cross-off perspective, you'll be able to see if forwarding is turned on. But if you need to see what that destination number is, you could come into their web portal and you would be able to see that. Now, if they have the basic or the local package, and say you need to get in to look at something and maybe they don't have web portal, you can give it web portal, look at whatever you need to look at, take web portal back out. As long as that's all done in the same day, then there'll be no billing or anything like that from a web portal perspective. I just wanted to let you guys know that. So if you need to look at something for a troubleshooting issue, then you can come in, look what you need to look at, turn it off or whatever, and then take web portal out of the package. Because in different star codes, they may not have access to web portal, but they dialed the star code for forwarding on accident, and now they've turned forwarding on and can't get incoming calls. You can walk them through how to turn that off using the disable star code for that. But if that customer's just not getting it, you can give them web portal real quick. Come in here, turn the forwarding off, log out, take web portal out of the package, and they're good to go. Okay. And then you can move over to the messages and calls page. This will show any voicemail messages. You can listen to the messages from Web Portal. So if you're not at home, you're at your work computer, you can pull up Web Portal and you can listen to your home phone line messages. Or for the shared voicemail, you can come in and listen to those shared voicemail messages. And then it drills down into detail for your different call types. So this will list your missed calls. This will list any calls that you dialed out. These are any received calls that were actually answered. And then if you deleted any records or messages, they'll display here on this tab to this particular messages and calls menu. For contacts, this is the page where you would actually add contacts over on the dashboard. That's just a quick link that would bring you over here. So for a business, under extensions, it would have all of the various different active phone lines that are on that account. And show the phone number along with the extension. So if you had a large business, a large enterprise, and you're looking for someone else's extension, you can gain that through your web portal. And then short codes allow you to quickly dial commonly dialed numbers. These are more of your speed dials. So as you set those speed dials up through the star codes, it will show those short codes here for you. You can't actually add them through Web Portal, but it will display any speed dials that have been set up through the speed dial star codes. Okay. Now we'll move over to Call Manager. I don't have any forwarding features on this line, but this is where you would do those. So let me move a few of these over. We'll do these 4. Submit. Let's do refresh. Okay, so now here's my call manager and here's my forwarding. So from forwarding, I can do my forward all or immediately, my busy forward, my unavailable forward, and then you can have selective. I moved over selective call forwarding, so then I can forward calls from selective callers. So you can set this up here in Web Portal. If the user set up some sort of forwarding through their star codes, it will display that here in the Web Portal application. So this would be, if they set it up through the star code and they turned it on, that would be checked, and then the phone number that they have calls forwarding to would be in this field. Okay. And then you have your busy forward, you have your unavailable forwarding, and then your selected callers. If you need selective callers, you'll have to apply a list. So you'll say edit list, and then you enter in the phone number of that caller that you want calls forwarded for. So when that one particular phone number calls you, you can have that one phone call forward to your cell phone, or everything else will either ring your home line for residential customers or your desk number or office number for businesses. And then we have forwarding destinations. So if they're basically the same phone number that you're going to be forwarding it to all the time, then you can come in and build that as a destination. So you're not having to type the phone number every time. You can just pick that destination. Okay. All right. Now this item here, this apps item, should only populate if the customer has also asked for kind of a click to dial feature in Web Portal. It's called Com Portal Assistant. So what it basically does is it allows the user to make phone calls from the Web Portal application rather than physically touching the hard phone that's on their desk. Now when they enter the phone number and they say dial, it's going to pick, the call's going to dial out from the phone on their desk. So the phone's going to pick up, there's going to be dial tone, you'll hear the digits get dialed and that call's going to go through, and you still talk to that destination on the other end through your regular phone. You're just not having to do the dialing from your phone. It also gives you the ability to kind of handle incoming calls from a quick perspective. So as you can see here, a little pop-up will display for that when an incoming call comes in. So if there are additional lines on your account and you've loaded in other destinations, some of those other forwarding destinations, then you'll have options like this display shows to redirect that particular phone call. Or if you don't want to answer it, you can send it directly to voicemail. Otherwise, you can just reach over and answer that phone call, and Web Portal is going to recognize, or Com Portal is going to recognize that you've done that at that point, that you've picked up that phone call. You can place it on hold from that click to dial manager, transfer it, all of those various options. So if you have a business customer that does a lot of, and they have a user that does a lot of dialing out, then the Com Portal Assistant, at least on that one phone line, might come in handy for that particular customer. Okay. And then last, we have our settings. So these are the account level settings. The end user can change their account password. This call services PIN really comes into play when you have the billing codes feature. And essentially what that is it's a situation where, or it's for a scenario where you may want to restrict long distance dialing for everyone, but only allow certain users to make long distance calls, and they have to type in a 4-digit PIN before the long distance phone number in order for that call to go through. So that's where a call services PIN would come into play. Okay. And then there's some call settings. So you have the call forwarding. So if they use the star codes, based on these selections, it's going to ask them for a new forwarding number each time they turn on their forwarding, versus just using the same phone number by default every time. Then for messages, you have settings. So the incoming calls are forwarded to voicemail after 25 seconds. That's that 5 number of rings. So it's 5 seconds per number of ring. So if the end user calls in and says, hey, people are calling me, it's going straight to voicemail, I can make outbound calls just fine, I'm not forwarding anywhere, I don't know what's going on, then you can come into their web portal and see if they've changed that forwarding seconds. Because you'd be surprised at how many people will say that their phone rings one time and they can't figure out why. And it's because they've come into Web Portal and they've messed with all of these settings. They can set up commands here so that way when voicemails are left, it can send them an email notification, or it can basically take that voicemail message itself and forward it to them in that email, and it would no longer be in their inbox anymore. But then you have the option to leave it in your inbox, which is what this option is here. And there's various different settings for the voicemail box. They can skip the password or the fast login. Then they can come in and make changes to their voicemail greeting also. And lastly, these are notifications. Typically, users don't really come this far into the system, but again, you'd be surprised. This has to do with their message waiting indicator and various different switch settings. So again, I wouldn't really mess with these, but if an end user has, then we can definitely look into it. So it's kind of just being able to build schedules from a residential perspective or a business perspective where you don't have premium attendant. And outdial, this is a business line. I don't believe the outdial option displays for residential customers. Okay. All right. From a web portal perspective, is there anything maybe you guys didn't see or anything that you have questions about?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, this phone line here is my test line. I'm not using it as far as for any types of calls or anything like that. So if you want to familiarize yourself with Web Portal, you're more than welcome to come into the system and pull up this phone line and use that link here to pull up Web Portal and get in there and play around. Okay, I think I filled your heads with a lot of information today.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me just a second. I'm looking over my notes on things that I wrote down. So I have the YPH codes and defining those ring patterns as far as from a business perspective. Okay. All right, so we're doing an update this evening, and most of the items in this particular update are kind of little fixes to things that we've already pushed out. So, for example, one of those was that port selection. So if you have a device that only has one port, when you were choosing the device type, that port number was defaulting, but as soon as you choose the device name, it takes away that default, that port default. So it's different things like that. So I'm just flipping through this release note right now. I think for the most part it's related to video, but I'm just taking another look and seeing if there's anything from a voice perspective that we need to take a look at.
Do you have a PDF you can send us with the release notes?
Yes, I'll get that out to you. I'll get that out to you this afternoon. As soon as we get off the call, I do have a change document for you. One of the things is the IP address. After this release, the IP address, if they've chosen static, and you've assigned IPs on that account, the IP addresses will display on the work order. The Mobi TV, the Mobi TV information will also be displaying on the work order after this release. So we took care of those items for you. And just making sure, again, there's nothing else related to voice.
You didn't give me what I asked for, though.
What is that?
The ability to add activities that I wanted to. Like different kinds of service orders.
Oh, like the NID installation?
Yeah.
No, I've got a ticket open on that. that's coming. I don't know why it didn't make it in this particular release, but all of those items are still open as far as development goes.
I want to be able to add my own that don't affect any kind of, like, nothing. No. I want to add my own service orders that really don't need any kind of provisioning or anything like that. Does that make sense? Kind of like the Nano WAP, you know, how it doesn't really do anything. It's just a way for us to keep up with the equipment.
Yes.
So I want to be able to add my own processes.
Okay.
Processes, rather. I'm not in Canada. I need to say it right.
Okay.
So go down there and beat Abby up, make him do it.
I made a note of that, so we'll to check on those for you. Okay. Right.
Yeah, I mean, since those processes don't actually require any kind of
provisioning,
activation,
automation. Yeah.
Right. Now we want to do what's it called? The dispatch. We want to be able to click that so that it closes it. And so it just stays out there open until we close it. But it would be nice if we could do them ourselves, because there's no telling what Thomas or Kay come up with, any processes that need to happen inside of there.
Yeah. All right.
It could be as simple as do 3 jumps and clap your hands before you leave. That kind of thing.
Yeah, but the ability to be able to add some sort of activity indicator, even if it's not necessarily a service order, since there's not really any tasks or cross-off.
But the reason that we want to do that, when you're when you search, when we do that little report that shows us, and we download a spreadsheet, shows us all the open service orders, which is really nifty. Well, it also shows you the Nano WEP and all that. But what it does is it will show you, it'll be John Brown on there 3 times, and one of those means survey. So we know we can't go to the next section until we do the survey.
Okay.
Or we know we don't.
Or the underground.
Or the underground, or whatever.
Okay.
But I want to be able, I don't want to have to call Ebby every time to do that. I want to do it myself.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Just like the ladies.
And I certainly don't want to wait for another revision for it.
Well, just like with the ladies, if they want for the one-time charges, if something comes up and y'all need to charge the customer for that, and there's not something already in there, Kay's able to go in and she's able to build a one-time charge, that will not at the account level, but she's able to build that one-time charge at the system level, so that way she can go down in and then apply that charge to the account level.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see what I can do for you. I think we're on the same page with that one.
All right. So am I going to get that before February?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Just tell him that Thomas is going to go into orbit.
Okay.
If we can.
Okay.
Because we want broadband to be in CrossSoft.
Mike would have to have it. That way Mike can have access to it.
Yes. No, I don't want Mike logging into SEDC if I can help it.
We print it.
I don't want that. I want it to be in CrossSoft. All broadband needs to be in CrossSoft.
Okay.
Electric will be in SEDC.
Broadband's going to be in SEDC too.
Well, it is. It's the billing part, but not the service orders.
Okay.
Deal?
All right. I think I got everything down. I was just making notes. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So in this particular release, we have a lot of stuff for Mobi TV, basically the video provisioning, where Jeffrey and I are going to do some testing tomorrow, and I put that testing at an hour, and I think Olivia said it would take about 45 minutes. I don't know that it's even going to take that long, but I felt like we should go ahead and allot it just in case. So I am in, what you're seeing right now is our test server. So this is where I was doing the testing for video. So we're going to take a look at that real quick so you can see, kind of get familiar with that before it's put into the system tomorrow. Kind of give you a sneak peek. So on the video tab, I already have something, but it'll look, basically it looks just like it does now. You just select add new to, or click here to add that video service. From there, you guys will have 3 packages based off of the information that we were given. You'll have Basic East, Basic West, and Basic Plus.
Yep.
Right, okay. So that's your package drop down. Now, the Basic East package will come with the Basic East bundle by default, and that bundle includes the channels that you told us should be included with Basic East. And the same goes for Basic West and Basic Plus. There's a specific channel bundle for each one of those, and those have those few features that come with each one of those packages. Then from there, you have expanded basic or beyond. So
actually, they're either or, because expanded or beyond includes all the channels from expanded basic.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you would essentially move over either if they wanted it, you would either move over the expanded basic, or you would move over the beyond to give them those additional channels on top of what they already get with the Basic East bundle. And then from there, you could add these various different channels. So if they want HBO, you move that over. That's going to give them all the HBO channels. So you pick and choose what they get, or basically what they're asking for, based off of that order entry when you got that information from the customer.
You have to have that.
But it should be included in the beyond.
It is, but basic
Just chooses location for us.
it's choosing. Well, let's make sure that you guys got this. So Basic East, Basic West, and Basic Plus have a cost to them.
Yes.
And then Expanded Basic has a cost.
Yes.
Which includes the Basic East, West, or Plus. But this is for provisioning right here, or is this for billing?
This is for billing and provisioning.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to come up.
Well, see,
on the bill.
Well,
but
see,
the package. Go ahead.
These bundles right here, when we build the bundles, the bundle logic, either something is not an add-on or it is. So your Basic East, your Basic Plus, and your Basic West are not add-ons. So they're included, the fees for that are included with your package fee. Anything, your Expanded Basic, your Beyond, Latino, Red Zone, everything else is an add-on, so it has an associated fee with it.
So the one at the top where it says Basic East, you're going to pick it in both places.
Well, hold on just a second. If I choose...
Yeah.
Hold on. If I chose a different package here. So this was one that the QA team built in the test system. So when they built this package, they said it should get the Beyond bundle by default. So the way your packages are going to work, when you choose Basic East, it's going to get Basic East by default. It's always going to have that, because they always need those basic channels that you said should come with that. And that's not this one right here is not billable because you're already billing for that in your package fee.
Based on the package. That's right.
Okay, what if they only want the basic package?
Well, that's what
And that's all you'll pick.
Yeah.
Then this stuff I already had on here. So this is what it would look like. You choose basic yeast, and this is, and your due date for that installation, you hit submit, you're done. You just pick the package, boom, I'm done.
There will be under package, there'll be a West, there'll be a what?
There'll be 3. There'll be basic East, basic West, and basic Plus.
Right. And then the Beyond and Expanded Basic are add-ons.
Yes, those are add-ons because they would have additional fees.
Yeah.
As well as the premium channels and so forth. So if they want any of the premium channels, you select those and move them over as they want them. And then additionally, you have your DVR stuff. And again, this is the test system. So if you see things that don't apply to you, like whole home DVR or anything like that, that's why you see those here. So you would move over if they did want DVR and that was indicated to us to be incremented by hours, then you would move over whichever one applied to that customer. And then if they wanted the concurrent streaming, then you would pick which one applied and move those over.
No matter what package, it all comes with 100. You would add either 100 more or 200 more, or so every package comes. We would automatically put 100 in there unless they wanted 2 or 3.
Yeah. So you'll have for features though, you'll have to manually move those over because where we are when we build the video packages, we can't include features for that by default. We can do the bundles by default, which is why you see that basic East in the blue font. Is because when I built this package, I told it every time this package gets selected, it should at least have this bundle. You can't remove it. Like you can't take it off. The system won't allow it. Okay. And then you'll select submit. That'll generate your new install video. And then you close the dispatch task on that when you guys are ready. Here it is, new install video. You'll close dispatch. Now, it does have a DC task because you are making or at least the system is making an Ethernet selection for you when there's only one port on that ONT, but if there's more, you'll have to select that Ethernet port. And so that information does have to go to AOE, which is why there is a DC task. And then there's a switching task, but that switching task isn't going to the Metaswitch. That's actually taking care of sending the information to Moby TV's system, provisioning system. I think it's called MUST.
All right. Well, we don't. Oh, the MUST. You mean from Moby TV? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which you will look at tomorrow when we're doing our testing.
Okay.
So that way you'll be able to see that based on what packages I'm choosing, what channel bundles, what features, that all of that is feeding through to Moby TV properly.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, this obviously is somewhat subject to change because there's still some negotiation on the TV packages.
Yes. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to be testing in your actual system tomorrow. We're going to be testing in your Crosssoft. So we're going to build everything, but because the rates and things haven't been decided yet or are kind of still up in the air, we're going to leave those fields open.
She's actually going to send Olivia the pricing.
Okay, great.
This afternoon.
Okay.
But what I meant was what channels and all that good stuff. It might change because apparently we're still negotiating with some of those off-air channels. So that's kind of up in the air.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't really matter because what we're doing is we're building packages in Moby, and you're just telling it the package. You're not really telling it exactly what channel. It really matters on the Moby end more than yours.
Correct.
Okay. Fabulous.
Okay, and you guys are already on 9.2, so you've already seen that the IPs now have packages. I'm just trying to make sure, while I have you, just trying to make sure that there's nothing else. Okay. All right. So my takeaway items, I have to send the YPH codes for those yellow page headers, and then I'll make sure that I send you something and go over those ring patterns again for the Madden and the multi-line hunt groups, just so you have that at your disposal. And then we'll see what we can do for you, Jeffrey. For those activities that you need to create.
Yeah. You're so good to me.
I try. But you make it kind of easy, so.
Some would beg to differ.
Activity order per customer config. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions for me?
No.
Okay. Well,
Amanda, you're going to send us that recorded session too, right?
Yes, I am.
Like you do.
Mm-hmm. It may come tomorrow, just depending on how long it's going to take to do the conversion. But I'll get it to you no later than tomorrow, and then I'll get. I think I can dig up my YPH codes. And should be able to get that to you today without a problem. And these ring patterns, I'm pretty sure where I have those documents.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you guys so much for your time today.
Thank you, Amanda.
All right. Bye, everyone.